Hello, everybody. Hey, if your doctor is not telling you these things, I'd find another doctor because he's lying to you. Check it out.
Here's the thing, sugar kills probably more people than smoking itself. The thing with sugar is that it isn't an instant death. It first starts with warning signs that you're consuming too much sugar, which is creating inflammation in your body, weight gain, and a whole host of problems. I'm going to be sharing the 7 warning signs to pay attention to that you might be killing yourself slowly with sugar. Spot these early on. Not only will I share the 7 warning signs, at the end I'm going to give you the solution to overcome the sugar problem and to burn fat and feel good. Let's start with the first warning sign. The first warning sign are some skin issues. Brown patches is the first thing that we notice when you're consuming too much sugar. This is usually a response of high insulin levels, and when you consume sugar, processed carbohydrates, and too much carbs in general, you'll have high levels of blood sugar, high levels of insulin, and typically it creates brown patches on your skin. High insulin levels is a growth factor, and with consuming too much sugar, it creates the promotion of too many skin cells. The high insulin from sugar stimulates the proliferation of keratinocytes and fibroblasts, which are the cells that form the outer and middle layers of the skin. Over time, this excessive growth can change the pigmentation of your skin, showing brown patches. These brown patches typically show up under your skin folds in the areas of the neck, the armpit, the groin, and sometimes even the knuckles. The other skin abnormality that occurs from too much sugar are skin tags. Again, with the high production of insulin, it creates an excessive growth of the formation of skin tags. These skin tags are commonly shown in the areas of your body where there are skin folds that experience friction, which are the neck, the armpits, the groin, and under the breasts. The second warning sign is high blood pressure levels. And you could test your blood pressure levels by getting an at-home blood pressure cuff, or you could do it at the doctor. But typically when you have high blood pressure levels, you have headaches, you'll have mood swings, and you just won't feel energized. And this is because so many people, and it may sound stunning, but half of Americans ages 20 and up, that's more than 122 million people, have high blood pressure, according to a 2023 report from the American Heart Association. Most people believe that high blood pressure is a result of high salt and sodium intake. But the untold truth is that sugar is the culprit. The belief that salt consumption raises blood pressure is based on bogus science. This conventional wisdom originates from French scientists from more than 100 years ago who based their findings on just 6 patients. Eating too much sugar inhibits nitric oxide, which is a very important molecule for health and longevity and for lowering inflammation. Nitric oxide is responsible for vasodilation, which is the opening of your blood vessels. This is very important to deliver oxygen and nutrients to your cells so you burn fat and feel good. When the blood vessels constrict because of the lack of nitric oxide, because sugar depletes the nitric oxide levels, the heart has to work harder, raising your blood pressure levels. This could also show up in men as erectile dysfunction and waking up in the morning without morning wood. Not good. The third warning sign is waking up in the middle of the night, usually between 2 and 4 a.m., feeling wired and tired, having difficulty going back to bed and back to sleep. Both high blood sugar levels and low blood sugar levels, so hyperglycemia and hypoglycemia, can result in this issue with sleep. With nocturnal hypoglycemia, or low blood sugar during the night, blood sugar levels drop too low, which stimulates the adrenal glands to pump up cortisol to create glucose via gluconeogenesis, which wakes you up and leaves you wired and tired in the middle of the night. Other common issues with sleep with sugar issues is nightmares or waking up feeling like you're crying out loud or screaming. So night terrors, sweating in the middle of the night, waking up with your pajamas or your boxers that are soaked in sweat, feeling tired and irritable and confused waking up in the middle of the night, trembling or shaking in the middle of the night, and a rapid heartbeat when you wake up in the middle of the night. The simple solution here, by the way, is to eat mostly protein and fat for your last meal of the day, which will keep your blood sugar and insulin levels stable, preventing from waking up in the middle of the night with these issues. I've also had many of my Keto Camp Academy students take a supplement called L-lysine, which is an amino acid, and a tablespoon of MCT oil or MCT powder right before bed to help with this issue. The fourth warning sign is frequent urination. When blood sugar levels are elevated, the kidneys attempt to filter and absorb the excess glucose from the blood. However, if the blood sugar levels are too high, the kidneys cannot reabsorb all the glucose and it spills out into the urine. There's two mechanisms of action here. Number one is something called osmotic diuresis. The presence of glucose in the urine draws more water into the urine by osmosis. This process is called osmotic diuresis. It increases the volume of urine produced, leading to frequent urination. Essentially, glucose acts as an osmotic agent, pulling water along with it into the urine, which leads to the second mechanism of action here, which is dehydration and feeling thirsty. The increased loss of water through urination can lead to dehydration. As the body loses more water, it triggers the thirst mechanism, causing increased fluid intake. This can create a cycle where high blood sugar levels lead to more urination, which leads to more drinking, and the cycle repeats itself. Frequent urination due to high blood sugar levels are often accompanied by the following symptoms: increased thirst, which I just referenced, unexplained weight loss in an unhealthy way, fatigue, blurred vision, and dry mouth. The fifth warning sign of too much sugar intake is frequent fatigue and cyclical energy levels throughout the day. When you consume sugar, it's going to raise your blood sugar levels and raise your insulin levels. The more sugar you consume, the higher your blood sugar levels rise, and the faster it drops. And that rapid drop in your blood sugar levels leads to fatigue. Your body is scrambling around to look for some energy sources, but that blood sugar level has dropped so dramatically it leaves you feeling fatigued, wanting to eat more sugar, more foods just to sustain your energy levels. And some people even reach for more coffee later in the day, other stimulants, 4-hour energy drinks, which are super toxic, all leading to a vicious cycle. It's not fun being on a blood sugar roller coaster because you are dependent and pretty much handcuffed to your next snack or meal just to sustain energy levels. The sixth warning sign of consuming too much sugar is increased cravings for sugar and carbohydrates. Again, this is a vicious cycle. The more sugar you eat, the more sugar you want. It stimulates parts in your brain for dopamine and other reward centers in your body and brain to want more of the sugar and carbohydrates. This is why logically and consciously you might be thinking, I'm done eating sugar, but your body and your brain just tells you, go back to the pantry and put your hands in that box of Oreos or bag of chips or reach for the ice cream in your freezer and eat more and more and more. It leads to this emotional, mindless eating, which increases food addiction and sugar addiction. I have personally been there myself when I was 250 pounds, physically and mentally obese. It is a vicious cycle, and we got to break out of this, and I'll show you how to do that at the end of the lesson here today. The seventh warning sign is the most obvious one, and that is increased weight gain, and I'm talking about stubborn fat, the fat around your belly, your love handles, and your hips, and difficulty burning that fat no matter what you do. When you consume sugar, as we mentioned already, high levels of insulin are produced. Insulin is the only hormone inside of your body that signals to your body to store fat. That's really important because there's over 600 hormones in your body. About 8 of them signal fat burning, 1 of them signal fat storage, and that is insulin. Insulin is the bully of the block. When he's called, all of your fat-burning hormones are gone. See, insulin is an energy sensor. Sugar stimulates insulin the fastest and the highest versus any other food out there. And when you stimulate insulin, you keep storing fat. You keep signaling to your metabolism, store fat. This is the way we were designed as human beings. Our metabolism is designed this way to store fat whenever insulin is produced. This is a survival mechanism that helped our ancestors survive the famine, to put on as much fat as possible for hibernation, for animals, or for lean months, weeks, days without food or limited food supply. But in this day and age, we could click on a phone and have an Uber Eats or DoorDash driver at our door in about 45 minutes with food. The famine never comes. We just constantly signal insulin and we keep storing fat. I have 2 bonus ones for you here. Number 8 is going to be dental issues and frequent dental issues. High sugar consumption is a leading cause of tooth decay and cavities. Bacteria in the mouth feed on sugar and produce acids that damage tooth enamel, leading to dental problems. High blood sugar levels can damage blood vessels, impairing blood flow to the gums. This reduces the ability of the gums to fight off infections, leading to gingivitis, which is inflammation of the gums, categorized by redness, swelling, and bleeding. And then number 2, periodontitis, a more severe form of gum disease that can lead to the destruction of tissues and bones supporting the teeth. This can result in loose teeth or tooth loss. And the final warning sign when it comes to excess sugar consumption is mood swings, irritability, and social media addiction. There are studies that show sugar lights up parts of your brain that produces dopamine as much as cocaine. And one study even shows that sugar is 8 times more addictive than cocaine. That is crazy to think that the same parts of the brain that light up when somebody has a cocaine addiction is the same part of the brain that lights up when somebody has a sugar addiction. This leads to dopamine resistance, meaning you're going to have mood swings, you're going to be more irritable, and you're going to want more dopamine hits, more sugar, more processed carbs just to get that hit. And it leads to bad behaviors like social media addiction, where you're mindlessly doom scrolling or watching fear porn, which is news on TV, just to get those dopamine hits. It leads to a big problem called dopamine resistance, which is similar to insulin resistance, and sugar leads to both of these problematic issues inside of the body. This means that when you're just alone with yourself or walking out in nature, it's hard to feel gratitude and experience the benefits out there because you're not getting a constant dopamine hit.
The average American is consuming around 300 grams of carbs per day, but the human body, the optimal way the human body wants to function, is pretty much 1 teaspoon of sugar in the bloodstream, which equates to about 80 milligrams per deciliter. When somebody is constantly eating high carbohydrates and elevating their glucose and insulin, symptoms start to manifest. And we're going to outline 9 specific symptoms that I want you to pay attention to, and then we could do something about it when you're aware. The first symptom is excess abdominal fat. Now, there's a difference between visceral fat, which is the white fat around your organs, love handles, and belly, and then subcutaneous fat. If you just look down and see if you have excess abdominal fat, that's a sign of excess insulin and glucose production, which typically means somebody might be in a pre-diabetic state. Why is this important, first and foremost? Well, we know that pre-diabetes leads to diabetes, and diabetes can lead to kidney disease, amputations, heart disease, and even cancer. So when you have a high production of glucose and insulin in your bloodstream, what's going to happen is insulin is the only fat storage hormone in the human body. When insulin is around, your fat-burning hormones, they're running away. Think of insulin as the bully of the playground. He shows up and everybody runs away. So that's one sign to pay attention to. The second symptom are skin tags. Skin tags typically show up around your eyelids, armpit area, groin, and on the back. And there's a direct correlation between excess glucose and insulin levels in the body and skin tags being developed. I've seen so many people get rid of their skin tags naturally by changing their nutrition. Yes, you could go and get your skin tags surgically removed, and they're not technically dangerous, but it's not taking care of the cause. They might just pop up again. But by lowering glucose and insulin in your body, your skin tags might fall off and stay off. Number 3 is frequent urination. Maybe you are urinating throughout the day or waking up in the middle of the night to urinate, and here's why. Excess glucose and excess insulin production causes your body to retain more water. And remember, anything more than about a teaspoon or 2 teaspoons of sugar in the bloodstream is considered a toxic state. So as a protective mechanism, the kidneys start to filter out the excess glucose, and water follows glucose. This is your body's way of protecting you to eliminate excess glucose in your bloodstream through urination, which leads to symptom number 4, dry mouth and feeling thirsty all the time. When you're constantly urinating, you're also going to lose electrolytes and minerals, which is going to cause you to have dry mouth and feel thirsty, which is why so many people feel dehydrated all the time. The solution is not to drink some juice or high glucose liquids. The solution is to drop glucose and insulin so you don't have this problem going on. Number 5 is tingling feet and tingling fingers. This is because excess blood sugars can destroy the capillaries to your nerve endings. That's why a lot of people who are diabetic experience really painful diabetic neuropathy, which is their nerve endings actually getting destroyed by excess glucose. Number 6, brain fog. You walk into a room to do something, you forget what you walked into the room for. You can't remember people's names. You just feel like a fog is going on in your head. And that's because when the brain is so dependent on glucose and you're constantly having high levels of glucose, your neurons essentially get starved. In chronic conditions, this could lead to Alzheimer's and other brain disorders. That's why some people call Alzheimer's type 3 diabetes. Number 7, you're hungry all the time. You're snacking every 2 to 3 hours. And if you miss a meal, You get hangry, hungry, and angry. You're irritable. You can't function. This is because your body is dependent on glucose every few hours. High carbohydrate foods do not activate the same mechanisms in your body as healthy protein and healthy fat. For example, when you are eating healthy protein, protein is awesome because it activates cholecystokinin, peptide YY, and leptin, which are chemicals and hormones in your body that tell your brain and your body you're full, put down the fork, no need to snack. Let's allow the body to tap into our fat stores for energy. When you're eating carbohydrates, it doesn't activate the same pathways. Here's a perfect example. If you're at a restaurant and you ate a 16-ounce piece of steak loaded with protein and fat, and somebody brings you another piece of steak, you're probably going to say, no way I could eat that. I am so full. I am so satiated. But they bring a dessert cart by your table. You're like, yeah, let's have some dessert. Let's drink some soda, because your body is not going to activate those satiety hormones and chemicals with carbs and sugar like it will for protein and fat. Number 8, sugar cravings and carb cravings. That's because your brain is dependent now on glucose. And it turns out there's a part of your brain that lights up when you experience a sugar craving. And it's the same part of the brain that lights up when somebody experiences a cocaine addiction. In this scenario, it makes sugar as addicting as cocaine. And some experts say sugar is 8 times more addictive than cocaine. Before I get into the final tip here, if you're getting any value from this video, hit the thumbs up button and subscribe to this channel. The last symptom you want to pay attention to is feeling tired and fatigued after your meals. This is typically seen as an afternoon energy crash, or you just feel really tired after eating a big meal. This is a postprandial response we don't want. The word postprandial simply means after eating. So if you're testing your glucose, one of the best things you can do is test your blood glucose. What you want to see an hour after eating your meal, if you're testing your blood glucose, is your glucose should be below 120 milligrams per deciliters. 2 hours after eating your meal, that should drop below 100 milligrams per deciliters. Typically, if somebody has prediabetes, insulin resistance, or even diabetes, they're seeing much higher levels than that, and what results is a crash in their glucose, and they feel tired, they feel fatigued. Now, those are the 9 symptoms to pay attention to. I also recommend getting some testing done, looking at your fasting glucose. The optimal range for fasting glucose is somewhere between 70 and 90 milligrams per deciliter. There's also a test called A1C, very important test, which is going to give you the 3-month average of your blood glucose. If your A1C is 5.7 to 6.4, that's considered prediabetes. If your A1C is 6.5 or higher, that's considered diabetes. An optimal A1C level is under 5.1. There's other tests that you could get done as well. Triglycerides, typically those who have prediabetes have higher levels of triglycerides. Another test is HDL, which is high density lipoprotein. Typically, if you have insulin resistance and prediabetes, you're going to have low HDL levels, which is categorized as under 50 milligrams per deciliters. An optimal range to be at is over 60 milligrams per deciliters of HDL. Every single cell in your body is dependent on metabolism. The Greek definition for metabolism is to transform. So we take food, we take light, we take oxygen, and our metabolism, our cells, transforms that into energy. And the reason why so many people struggle with energy and they're inflamed and they have diabetes or whatever the condition is, it's a struggling metabolism. So I'm going to share the top 5 causes to why we have metabolic dysfunction, but even better, the solutions as well. So it's great to be here with you today. Sandy, thank you for putting this on. Like Jonathan just shared, he had a great lecture. It takes a lot of work and all these moving parts to put on a show like this, so I'm grateful to be a part of it in my hometown of Miami. So, without further ado, let's get into the slides. According to the CDC and cancer.org, 1 in 3 women are diagnosed with cancer within their lifetime, men 1 in 2. 60% of Americans are diabetic or pre-diabetic. They're predicting by the year 2032, not too far from now, 1 in 2 children will be born on the autism spectrum. Heart disease is the #1 killer in the United States. A person dies from heart disease every 33 seconds. 600,000 plus people every year die from heart disease. And there's a term called lipophobia. It's a noun, a fear of dietary fat based off 50 plus years of misinformation and propaganda. What do I mean by that? Well, if I asked, not here, because we're smart and we're forward thinking, but if I asked what do I mean by that? Well, if I asked, not here, because we're smart and we're forward thinking, but if I asked 100 people on South Beach, what is the cause of heart disease and heart attacks and strokes? What are they going to say? High cholesterol, right? We've been taught high cholesterol, stay away from saturated fat. And it's thanks to this guy. How many of you know Ansel Keys? Anybody know Ansel Keys, the history of Ansel Keys? Okay, not a lot of you, but this is the reason why we have been thought to believe that fats cause heart attacks. 1950s, working with the US government, and he had a hypothesis that the countries that have the highest rates of heart disease are the countries that consume the most amount of saturated fats and cholesterol. So he surveyed 22 countries, but he only published 6 of them because the other countries didn't fit his hypothesis. And the 6 countries he published, he claimed that they were consuming saturated fat, but they were eating trans fat margarine. The government believed his lies, and to this day, 2024, even though this is the 1950s, we're dealing with the misinformation because a lie told often enough becomes the truth. Didn't we see that in the last few years with COVID? And the reason why so many people believe that cholesterol causes heart attacks is because when they look at autopsies of heart attack victims, they see in their arteries a lot of cholesterol built up. But that's like saying every time there's a fire in my neighborhood, I notice firefighters there. So they are the cause of the fire, because every time there's a fire, there's always firefighters. Now, the firefighters are there to put out the fire. The cholesterol is there to put out the fire, the inflammation. You have 70 trillion cells in your body. Every cell is made up of a membrane, which is made up of cholesterol. Cholesterol makes your hormones. Cholesterol helps your liver produce bile. Cholesterol is vital for health and longevity. And there's a gentleman who's a heart surgeon, Dr. Philip Ovadia, who I've had on my Keto Camp podcast. And he's going to share, I'm going to play this short clip with you. He's going to share how there's only one cause of heart disease, only one, and that is damage to the blood vessels. So check this out.
Forms of heart disease, but the most common form is what we call atherosclerotic
Is that loud enough?
heart disease.
Can you make that louder?
Plaque within the arteries of the heart that can ultimately lead to things like heart attacks. And when you look at atherosclerotic heart disease, it really comes down to one major factor, and that is damage to the blood vessel wall. That is the inciting event that has to happen for these plaques to start to build up. Now, what causes that damage? That's where we get into some different factors.
That's the
big
question.
ones.
Yeah.
Yep. The big ones are going to be insulin resistance, first, and foremost, probably the most common problem today. Smoking is another big one. Now, we've done a pretty good job at cutting down on the smoking rates. And, that ultimately is what led to some of the improvements we saw around heart disease, throughout the 1980s, 1990s, and, up until about 2000, when that downward trend that we were seeing started to go back up again. Probably high blood pressure is the other most common one we see. But again, high blood pressure acts via insulin resistance. So it really comes down to insulin resistance and then other toxins that damage the blood vessels, smoking being the most common, but there are other things like heavy metals, air pollution, things like that can cause that as well. But ultimately, we have to come back to damage to the blood vessel wall, to the lining of the blood vessel, as the root cause of heart disease.
Insulin resistance. Insulin resistance is the first domino to fall before all these other diseases happen. So one of the most important things you can do for your health, and if you're working with clients and patients, what you can do for them, is to test your fasting insulin. Write it down. Test your fasting insulin. You want to have your insulin should be sensitive. It should be in the single digits. Like my fasting insulin is typically 3. If we see it 15, that's insulin resistance. If we see it 30, that's full-blown insulin resistance. And here's the thing, 14 years of this before your blood sugars change and you're diagnosed with diabetes. And we'll talk more about diabetes, but diabetes leads to heart disease as well. And here's the truth, here's the reason why they don't want you to know the truth, actually. The statin industry, look how much they made last year. $15.4 billion industry to lower cholesterol. But here's the thing, we don't want to lower cholesterol. That's dangerous. And most heart attacks actually occur with people who have normal to low cholesterol, not high cholesterol. This is a 2009 study. We've known this. But big pharma, big food, big government does not want us to know the truth. My goal, and I know a lot of the speakers here, is to strip the power away from big pharma and to give it to you, to your community. Because look, the body is built to be self-healing. I want to talk more about that. I also had Nathan Bryan on my podcast. I think he's around here. He's a friend of mine. He's a nitric oxide researcher, Dr. Nathan Bryan. He's great. He's got some great products. And here's what he shared. It's a 60-second clip about low cholesterol, 200 or less, and what it does to block nitric oxide. Check this out. That you're more concerned if somebody has a total cholesterol of less than 200 versus somebody who has a higher cholesterol. Explain that and what it does to block nitric oxide.
Our body makes cholesterol, so our body doesn't make mistakes. If our body needs cholesterol, our body's going to make it on demand. So we get cholesterol from the diet. We also get it through endogenous production. Cholesterol is also the backbone for things like testosterone, estrogen, vitamin D. So if our cholesterol gets too low, we can't make hormones for vitamin D. We have a global epidemic of testosterone deficiency in men and hormone imbalances in women and vitamin D deficiency. Our body heals itself, right? Our body senses what's going on and self-corrects. But if we have a drug that inhibits endogenous cholesterol production, which is what a statin does, then our body can't respond. So if it senses that we're not getting enough cholesterol or that we need to make it, then the body can. The consequences of that are obviously obvious now.
We want our total cholesterol over 200. As you can see, under 200 is not a good idea. And one of the things he also shared, this is another 60-second clip, antiseptic mouthwash, Scope Listerine, blocks nitric oxide in your mouth and leads to heart disease and erectile dysfunction. Check this out.
So when you disrupt the oral microbiome, it shuts down nitric oxide production. We published, I believe it was in 2012, that if you use mouthwash, your blood pressure goes up. I was on the doctor's show several years ago revealing that if you use mouthwash, you lose the cardioprotective benefits of exercise. So think about this. You try to do all the right things. You try to eat a good diet. You try to get moderate physical exercise. But if you use in mouthwash, you eliminate the entire cardioprotective benefits of everything you're doing. So, there's a reason we don't take an antibiotic every day for the rest of our lives, because the disruption in the gut microbiome.
It's like dropping a nuke. It'll take care of the bad guys that we want to get to, but also the civilians that...
Yeah, it's collateral damage that causes system. It wreaks havoc on the body. The microbiome, the bacteria that live in and on our body, outnumber on cells 10 to 1. So we eradicate those to our own demise. So we have to maintain a healthy microbiome.
So no mouthwash. That's the next tip right there. What would you say, if I ask the average person what causes heart attacks, they're going to say, obesity, smoking, bad fats, high LDL cholesterol, and all that may be true. But there was actually a book in the 1980s that came out from Dr. Larry Dossey, a medical doctor, called Recovering the Soul. I mean, just the title alone inspires me. I just love that title of the book. But this study in the book showed they could predict when Americans have their first heart attack. More heart attacks take place Monday morning in the United States between 8 and 9 a.m. That's the majority, 85% of the American public, according to studies. Why? Look at the bottom sentence. Going to jobs they hate. Not living a life on purpose with their purpose. Mentally stressed. 85% of the time. That's because most people tiptoe their way through life hoping to land safely on death's door. But when you live on purpose with your purpose, it's one of the best biohacks you can do. And by the way, towards the end of my lecture here, I'm going to give you the single greatest biohack that you could ever implement, and it's free, and it'll upgrade everything you're doing with your nutrition and with your health in general. Ketones is something that I study a lot. I teach keto, and there's actually a protective effect when you're in ketosis. A lot of people think keto is going to cause a heart attack, when in reality, ketones have a protective effect on the heart. Ketones signal to the mitochondria to reproduce and to actually create mitochondrial biogenesis. So when we think about how God built the human body, and I mentioned this yesterday during the panel, the cells in your body that are most metabolically active and needed for survival are the cells that have the highest concentration of mitochondria. the brain, the eyes, the ovaries, the testicles, etc. Regions of the brain could have over 1 million to 2 million mitochondria in a single cell, ovaries 100,000. So that's how important the mitochondria are. But the heart is also loaded with mitochondria, and you can see ketones have a protective effect on the mitochondria. Although ketones may provide supplemental fuel for the energy-starved heart, their cardiovascular effects appear to extend far beyond cardiac energetics. Indeed, ketone bodies have been shown to influence a variety of cellular processes, including gene transcription, inflammation, oxidative stress, endothelial function, cardiac remodeling, and cardiac risk factors. And tomorrow, Dr. Vlad Mansour is going to give you a masterclass on ketones, by the way, so stay tuned for that. So what percentage of American adults are healthy, metabolically flexible? It's not a lot. This is a study showing, in terms of obesity, in 1985, I'm going to play this video. There's no audio, but I want you to pay attention to the rates of obesity as it's progressed throughout the years. Check this out. So you can see, 1989, 1990, we're reaching 10 to 14% in some states. Now we're at 15 to 19% in some states. As we move into the 2000s or late 90s, we see some states with over 20%, and it keeps going and keeps going and keeps going in the wrong direction. But here's the thing, recent studies also show that 12% of Americans are metabolically healthy. I'll say this a different way, 88% of Americans are metabolically unhealthy. I call them, they're in a keto deficiency. They really could use keto. Recent studies also show it's closer to 93% of Americans are metabolically unhealthy, meaning only about 6.8% of us are metabolically healthy. I think we're all here at this conference this weekend. And I'll say that they're all in a keto deficiency. Look, there's nothing new about keto. It's just the metabolic state. The people that are have a broken metabolism, they're burning sugar. They need to burn fat sometimes. And that's what keto is. Harvard is predicting by the year 2030 that 50% of the population here in the great land of America will be classified as obese. We have a problem, but here's the thing. In the 1970s, it's very uncommon. Dr. Robert Lufkin is back there. His book talks all about this. So why are so many people metabolically inflexible? First of all, nobody has a weight problem. It's a weight symptom. I used to be obese and suicidal and depressed, physically obese, mentally obese. This is 2008, that photo of me on the left. And I changed my metabolism. I changed my thoughts. I implemented the things I'm about to share with you, and I transformed my health, right? Anybody can do it. I was broken. I was on the internet looking for ways to end my life. I was ready. Then I took ownership and responsibility, and I changed my health. And anybody could change their health. The body is so well equipped to do so. And I have this book, Keto Flex. I have 50 copies to give away after my lecture. I'm going to give away a few during this lecture too. But you can see some of my colleagues have endorsed it. Dr. Fung Bickman, Cynthia Thurlow, Megan Ramos, etc. I get to share the stage with friends and colleagues all over the world. And here's the goal: to become a genius. Einstein said intellectuals solve problems. Geniuses prevent them. How much better is it to be proactive than to be reactive and treat symptoms? So let's get into the 5 root causes, top 5 root causes of metabolic dysfunction and disease. Number 1, toxins, environmental toxins. Let's talk about this real quick. According to the Environmental Working Group, they examined the cord blood of newborn babies, and here's what they found. They began life exposed to 287 of the 413 toxic chemicals that were studied. 180 of them were known to cause cancer. Cancer rates in children have risen 67.1% since 1950, and according to the Columbia School of Public Health, 95% of cancers died in environment. Let's start with the low downstream stuff. Plastics. This study showed the average person eats a credit card every single week. 5 grams of plastic. From plastic water bottles, heating up plastic Tupperware. So what's the solution? Glass. Drink out of glass bottles as much as possible. Stay away from plastic Tupperware. These toxins, as you're about to learn, get stored in your body fat. So plastic is an issue. Receipts. Thermal receipts. When you go to Whole Foods, when you go to the gas station, when they ask you for your receipt, I always say no. Here's why. They did studies on receipts, and they found that these receipts contain BPA, which is a toxin that is 250 to 1,000 times greater than the BPA found in cans of food. So say no to receipts. Look at your credit card statement online. And it's really not about calories. We have this obesity issue, but it's not really an obesity issue. That's the symptom of something that's happening. It's toxins that are actually causing metabolic dysfunction and diabetes. And I think it's a big disservice when we have health influencers, doctors, dietitians telling their patients and clients, you're overweight, just eat less and move more. How many of you have been taught that or heard that before? Just eat less and move more, right? The old dogma. That's like saying, hey, Warren Buffett, who's a wealthy man and I want to learn how to get wealthy. I asked Warren Buffett a question and he chooses me and he goes, go ahead, Ben, what's your question? And I say, Warren, how do I get rich like you? And he looks at me and he says, that's easy, young man, just spend less than you earn. Okay. That makes sense, but it's not giving you the solution. Eat less, move more makes sense, but it's not giving you the solution. So I think we do a big disservice when we just tell people it's all about calories. You're overweight, your metabolism's not working, just eat less and move more. It does not work, especially long term. Now, these toxins are the new paradigm. The old way of thinking is that it's your genetics, it's a sedentary lifestyle. That's why you're overweight. The new paradigm is actually these obesogens, these toxins that are causing it. So here's how it works. The number one priority for the human body, survival. The body wants to survive. It will do everything possible to survive. So when these toxins enter your body, they're called obesogens. You can see the first bubble there. They activate a pathway in your body called PPAR gamma. This is the innate intelligence's way of shuttling those toxins where? To your fat cells. Because there's a lot of room there. And if there's not room, it'll increase your fat cells. And if there's not enough room there, it'll create new fat cells. Because the solution to pollution is dilution. And there's a lot of dilution in your body fat. So it makes us obese. These toxins make us obese. And then we go on these extreme diets, and we start burning fat and dumping toxins, and we feel awful. So they're lipophilic, meaning fat-loving. And this is a survival mechanism. The body does it to prevent you from dying right away and prevent these toxins from freely circulating in the body. There's a new classification, you can see all the way at the bottom there, called diabetogens. These are chemicals that enter the body, kill the beta cells in your pancreas that produce insulin, or disrupt their function, which leads to diabetes. So the higher your stress bucket, the higher your toxic load, the more symptoms you're going to have. And I'm going to relate this to the biohacking space in a second, but you can see that bucket, you have 70 trillion cells, so you have 70 trillion buckets in your body. If you have a lot of toxins and trauma and infections, it's going to lead to the symptoms. But with biohacking, here's the thing. I love biohacking. I love this expo. I love being a part of the biohacking space. I see a lot of people whose stress bucket, their toxic bucket is so full, and they hear about red light therapy, cold plunging, they hear about different things. Let me go back a second. And they do too much. And they violate a principle called hormesis. How many of you have heard of hormesis before? Y'all are smart. Yeah, half of you have. So hormesis is one of the most important things you can view your health through. And I'm going to explain, this is the definition according to Wikipedia, a phenomenon in which a harmful substance gives a stimulating beneficial effect to living organisms, humans, when the quantity of the harmful substance is small. Let me explain this a little bit better. Exercise is the perfect example. So you can see that green graph right there, that hormetic zone. You're a couch potato, let's say, and you decide to go exercise. And when you exercise, and if you do the right amount of stress, right amount of stimulation, and recover, you stay in that hormetic zone, and then you have reactive oxygen species that drop, which is free radicals, antioxidants go up, all these good things happen. But if you went and did CrossFit as that first workout, then you get out of that zone, you actually hurt yourself. So stress is not bad. Stress is vital to health and longevity, as long as you adapt to the stress. So let's talk about biohacking real quick. Red light, I have panels at home. Cold plunge, I have a plunge at home. Sauna, I'm getting a sauna soon. Fasting, PEMF, all the things out here. What do they have in common? They're stressing the body. Is that bad? Well, if you're not adapting to it, it is. And I see people hear about cold plunging, for example. I mean, come on. I asked the average person, how long should you cold plunge? What are they going to say? 3 minutes. 3 minutes, Ben. If somebody's stress bucket is so high and you put them in a 3-minute cold plunge, that person will not adapt. They're going to feel awful the rest of the day.
So think about this. Your doctors go to college to learn all this education to teach you. Has any of your doctors ever taught you this stuff? And then you got to figure out why. Why wouldn't they? I would say about big pharma and money. And that's bad. This guy is a doctor and he's very good. This is part 1. I didn't want to make the video too long, so it's part 1. If you want to see part 2, you'll have to look it up and it'll say part 2 of this. But yeah, think about it. If your doctor's not telling you this stuff, and I've only had one doctor that helped me lose over 100 pounds probably 15 years ago, and guess what they did? They got rid of her. So what's that tell you? Very suspicious, isn't it? Hey, subscribe, hit the like button. Love you guys.